Some battles are not fought with swords, guns, or fists. They are fought in silence within the walls of your own home. The enemy does not always enter through the front door. Sometimes he hides in the very objects you welcome inside. What looks harmless can be a gateway. What appears decorative can carry a curse. Today, we will uncover the 7 hidden objects witches place to destroy your peace, your family, and your destiny. And once you see them, you will never allow darkness to have authority in your house again. Unmasking the hidden traps begins with understanding that the enemy rarely shows up looking like the enemy. He doesn't come dressed in red with horns, holding a pitchfork, knocking on your door saying, "Here I am, I've come to destroy you." No, he is far more subtle, far more cunning, far more patient. He works in shadows, in whispers, and in things that appear harmless, ordinary, or even beautiful. That's why so many lives are in bondage while people smile, while they decorate their homes, while they think they are safe. But what if I told you some of the very objects sitting in your house right now are not just decorations, but invitations? Invitations for darkness to walk in and claim territory in your life. The greatest deception is to make you believe something has no power, when in fact it carries a spirit. Think about it. Why does light drive out darkness every single time? Because light is not just a physical thing, it is a force, it carries authority. In the same way, objects can carry an atmosphere, a spirit, an influence, and when that influence is not of God, it becomes a trap. These traps are designed to look innocent. They're designed to blend in. They're designed so that you won't question them. And once you accept them, once you place them in your home, they begin to speak silently into your environment. Have you ever walked into a room and felt uneasy, but you couldn't explain why? Have you ever stayed in a house and had restless dreams, sudden fear, or constant arguments that seem to have no root? These are not accidents. These are signals that something has been planted, something has been allowed in, something is working against your peace and against your destiny. The enemy uses objects like bait. He disguises poison in beauty. He hides curses in the ordinary. And while you sleep, while you relax, while you ignore, those objects are operating like open doors. This is why discernment is not optional. You must see beyond what your eyes show you. You must ask, what does this represent? What does this symbolize? Where did it come from? Who gave it to me? Because sometimes the greatest danger is not the thing you see coming, but the thing you never questioned. The pictures on your wall, the figurines on your shelf, the symbols on your jewelry, each one either blesses or burdens. There is no neutral ground in the spirit. So I ask you today, what has been sitting in your home, silently working against you? What gifts have you accepted without prayer? What objects have you carried for years that may have been designed to invite darkness? The traps are real, the battle is real, and the enemy is strategic. But once you identify the traps, once you unmask them, you strip the enemy of his power. And if the first trap can be exposed, imagine what will happen when we uncover the second one. When your house becomes a battlefield, you must realize this is not just about brick and mortar, walls and windows. Your home is more than a structure. It is an atmosphere. It is a sanctuary. It is a gate of influence for your family, your children, and your future. And that is exactly why the enemy targets it. He knows if he can invade your home, he can invade your mind. If he can disrupt your home, he can disrupt your destiny. If he can turn your home into a place of war, then he can make you wary before you ever step out to face the world. Have you noticed the fiercest arguments don't always happen in the workplace? They don't always happen in public. Most times, they happen right where you sleep, where you rest, where you are supposed to feel safe. Why? Because the enemy wants your home to become his ground of warfare. He wants your living room to be his arena, your bedroom to be his battlefield. And the strategy he uses is subtle. He introduces objects, symbols, things that carry spiritual weight. What looks like just an artifact, just a gift, just a harmless decoration can become a spiritual magnet for conflict, fear, confusion, and oppression. You see, a battlefield doesn't always look like blood and weapons. Sometimes it looks like sleepless nights, constant tension, strange noises, or children having nightmares. Sometimes it looks like sudden sickness that no doctor can explain, or financial holes that never seem to close. The moment peace leaves your home, the war has already begun, and the enemy smiles because you didn't even know the invasion took place. Think about it. Why does Scripture talk so much about the household, about guarding the gates, about cleansing the dwelling place? Because the spirit world respects legal ground. If you allow something into your home, you have given permission for either blessing or bondage. That is why some homes are filled with joy and others feel heavy, lifeless, and drained. The objects you allow inside do not just sit there quietly, they create an atmosphere. And once the atmosphere is polluted, the enemy no longer needs to knock at your door. He is already inside. So ask yourself, has your home become a battlefield? Have you noticed tension that makes no sense? Arguments that erupt out of nowhere? Fear that suddenly grips the night? Have you accepted gifts that you never prayed over, souvenirs you never questioned, ornaments that carry symbols you don't even understand? The enemy thrives on ignorance, but when your eyes are opened, when you recognize the ground he is standing on, you can take it back. And once you see your house for what it truly is, either a sanctuary or a battlefield, you will understand why the enemy goes to such lengths to disguise the weapons he plants inside. But what happens when those weapons are not just disguised as beauty, but actually carry curses within them? The silent weapons of witchcraft are the most dangerous because they operate without noise, without warning, without any obvious sign of attack. When a weapon is loud, you can prepare. When a weapon is visible, you can defend. But when a weapon hides in silence, it does its damage before you even realize it's there. And that is exactly how the enemy works. He uses silence, he uses disguise, he uses subtlety to plant destruction right under your nose. These weapons are not guns, not knives, not swords, but objects infused with spiritual assignments. They look powerless, but they carry intention. They look harmless, but they have been marked to release confusion, fear, sickness, or division. And because they are silent, because they do not announce themselves, they can stay in your home for years, working quietly, draining you slowly until your strength is gone and you don't even know why. Have you ever asked yourself why certain patterns keep repeating? Why relationships keep breaking in the same way? Why financial loss keeps showing up at the same time every year? Why the same sickness keeps reappearing no matter the treatment? These are not just coincidences. These are the effects of silent weapons at work, objects that act as spiritual triggers, opening doors to the enemy every time they remain in place. You may have thought that small souvenir you bought was just a memory, or that necklace someone gave you was just a gift, or that artwork you hung was just decoration. But what if those things were consecrated before they reached you? What if they were prayed over, cursed, or dedicated to darkness before you ever laid eyes on them? Remember, the enemy is strategic. He understands that if he can't reach you directly, he will plant something around you that speaks silently against you. This is why discernment is not just for church, it's for your living room, your bedroom, your closet, your walls, because the objects you live with either create an altar of blessing or an altar of bondage. The enemy doesn't need you to bow down to idols in the open. He only needs you to unknowingly house them. Once they are in your space, once you've accepted them, they begin to function like spiritual microphones, amplifying his influence without ever raising their voice. So I ask again, what silent weapons are operating in your home right now? What items have been positioned as open doors without your awareness? Because when you understand that silence does not mean absence, you will begin to see why peace has been missing, why breakthroughs have been delayed, why progress feels resisted. The weapons are silent, but their effects are loud. And if silent weapons can work in the shadows, imagine the power of objects that carry curses openly, boldly, intentionally placed to invite darkness into your home. Guarding the gates is one of the most important responsibilities you will ever have, because the gates of your home determine what comes in and what goes out. Every gate is a point of access, and access means authority. If you control the gates, you control the flow. But if the gates are left unguarded, if the gates are opened carelessly, then anything, anyone, any spirit can walk right in. And once it enters, it does not ask for permission. It takes possession. Now think carefully, what are the gates of your home? The doors you open, the windows you leave unprotected, the things you allow to hang on your walls, the music you permit to play, the conversations that fill the air, even the technology that sits in your living room. Every one of these is a gate. Every one of these is either a channel of blessing or a channel of bondage. The enemy doesn't need to break into your house if you leave the gate unlocked for him. He doesn't need to fight you head on if you willingly invite him in through something that looks harmless. Have you noticed how easy it is to let things slip past your guard? A gift you never questioned, a symbol you never studied, a decoration you thought was innocent, yet all of these can serve as gates. And once the gate is compromised, once the entry point is corrupted, then the entire atmosphere of your home shifts. Peace leaves, joy weakens, unity breaks down. Because the gates determine the environment. The enemy understands gates better than most people. He knows that if he can control the access points, he controls the territory. That is why some families fight constantly, why children struggle with rebellion, why fear creeps into the night. The gates were not guarded. Something was allowed to slip through. And remember, it only takes one open gate for an intruder to enter. So I ask you now, who is guarding the gates of your home? Are you alert? Are you discerning? Or have you been distracted by the business of life? Have you been so focused on the visible that you forgot the invisible? Because every spiritual attack begins with access. No access, no authority. That means the enemy cannot touch what he cannot enter. But the moment you drop your guard, the moment you accept something without discernment, the gates swing wide open, and the battle begins inside your house. You must guard the gates with intention. You must ask questions, pray over objects, examine symbols, and protect the atmosphere of your dwelling place. Because your home is not just a shelter, it is a sanctuary. And if you don't guard it, someone else will claim it. And if gates can determine the atmosphere of your home, imagine what happens when objects are not just entry points, but vessels carrying curses within them. Objects that carry curses are some of the most deceptive tools the enemy uses, because they don't just sit in your house. They work against you every single day. They may look harmless. They may even look beautiful. But behind their surface lies a spiritual assignment. A cursed object is not just a thing. It is a carrier. It carries a word spoken over it, a ritual performed through it, or a dedication made upon it. And once that object enters your space, the curse begins to operate as if it has legal right to be there. This is why some people find themselves in cycles that never seem to break. You replace the furniture, you paint the walls, you move to a new city, but the same heaviness follows you. Why? Because the object was not just physical, it was spiritual. It was never about the wood, the fabric, or the metal. It was about the spirit attached to it. You carried the curse with you without even knowing it. Think about it. Why would Scripture warn against bringing certain things into your house, saying they would defile you. Because once a cursed object is in your possession, it doesn't just sit there quietly. It creates an atmosphere that invites darkness. It releases confusion, sickness, accidents, poverty, strife. It works silently but effectively, wearing you down little by little until your hope begins to fade. Have you ever noticed how some gifts bring more problems than blessings? Have you seen how a simple object can shift the atmosphere of a room? One day peace is there, and the next day you feel a weight, a tension you cannot explain. This is not imagination. This is the influence of curses hidden in plain sight. The enemy knows that if he can't attack you openly, he can attach his influence to something you accept willingly. And the moment you welcome it into your home, you give it permission to operate. That's why discernment is critical. Not every gift should be kept. Not every souvenir should be displayed. Not every symbol belongs in your life. You must ask yourself, what does this object represent? Where did it come from? Who placed it in my hand? Because while some objects bring blessing, others carry burdens. And once a burdened object is allowed inside, it will keep speaking until it is removed. So I challenge you today, examine your home, examine your possessions, examine the things you once thought were ordinary. Are they truly harmless, or are they carrying words and rituals you never heard, but are still active? Because cursed objects don't announce themselves, but their effects cannot be hidden. They are revealed in the atmosphere, in the patterns, in the battles you keep fighting over and over. And if cursed objects can weigh down a home, imagine the level of influence when the enemy goes further, when he plants entire hidden altars within your space, built not to decorate, but to dominate. The enemy does not just settle for slipping objects into your home. He goes even further. He builds hidden altars. An altar is a place of sacrifice, a place of agreement, a place where spiritual transactions take place. And if your home is supposed to be a sanctuary, then a hidden altar becomes a rival throne right in the middle of it. The danger is most people don't even realize when an altar has been established. It doesn't always look like a shrine with candles or statues. Sometimes it looks like an arrangement of objects positioned intentionally. Sometimes it looks like a table that has been dedicated without your knowledge. Sometimes it is hidden in plain sight, yet it carries the power to invite darkness into your daily life. Altars are not neutral. They either call on heaven or they call on hell. They either bring blessing or they bring bondage. And the enemy is crafty. He knows that if he can plant a hidden altar in your home, he has built a foundation for continuous access. That altar becomes a spiritual magnet, drawing in forces you never invited, influencing the atmosphere you live in, shifting the tone of your relationships, and even affecting the future of your children. Have you ever wondered why certain rooms feel heavier than others? Why some corners of a house seem unusually cold, unwelcoming, or unsettled? It may not just be the air. It may be the presence of a hidden altar, silently drawing power, silently feeding a curse, silently strengthening the enemy's hold. These places are not just decorations, they are spiritual stations. And unless they are torn down, they will continue to operate day and night without rest. The frightening part is that altars don't always start with you. Sometimes they were placed by people before you. They may have been there when you moved in. They may have been established by someone you trusted. They may even be tied to objects passed down through generations, carrying unseen agreements from the past. But once they are in your home, once they are in your possession, they begin to speak. And their voice is never neutral. It is either for you or against you. So I ask you, what altars are standing in your house right now? What arrangements have been left untouched because you thought they were harmless? What objects have been placed together, creating an invisible invitation for darkness to rule? These altars may not have fire or blood upon them, but they still carry power and they still demand influence. This is why it is not enough to decorate your home. You must sanctify it. It is not enough to sweep the floors. You must cleanse the atmosphere. Because as long as hidden altars remain, they will keep feeding the enemy's claim. And if the enemy can establish altars within your house, imagine how much stronger his grip becomes when he turns your very home into a dwelling place for spiritual invaders. Protecting your household from invisible invaders means understanding that not every intruder comes through the front door. Some walk in unseen, carried by the very things you allow inside. These invaders are not flesh and blood. They are not people you can see with your eyes, but forces that attach themselves to objects, environments, and even habits. They operate in silence, they hide in shadows, and their goal is simple: to drain your peace, to break your unity, to weaken your faith, and to plant confusion where there should be clarity. Your household is not just where you eat and sleep. It is the training ground for your future, the safe place for your children, the resting place for your soul. If the enemy can invade that space, he doesn't need to fight you in the open. He will win the battle before you even step outside. That is why his attacks are so often invisible, because if you cannot see him, you will not resist him. And if you do not resist, he can operate freely. Have you ever noticed how arguments flare up over the smallest things? How anxiety creeps in with no explanation? How exhaustion seems constant even when you rest? These are not always natural. They can be the footprints of invisible invaders who have already claimed a corner of your home. And they don't always come through obvious sin or open rebellion. Sometimes they slip in through objects given as gifts. Sometimes through items bought without discernment. Sometimes through symbols you never understood but hung on your wall anyway. The truth is, you can be a good person, a kind person, even a praying person, and still be hosting invaders you didn't recognize. Because goodness does not cancel deception. Only discernment does. And if you do not take the time to examine, to question, to pray, then the enemy will continue to smuggle his influence into your home under the cover of normalcy. But once you open your eyes, once you realize that the unseen is often more dangerous than the seen, you can begin to protect your household. Protection does not mean fear. It means awareness. It means asking the right questions. What does this object represent? Where did it come from? Why does this atmosphere feel different? It means refusing to accept everything that is handed to you. It means cleansing your home, not just with soap and water, but with authority and prayer. So I ask you now, have invisible invaders already set up camp in your household? Have you ignored the strange patterns, the unexplained heaviness, the sudden resistance that seems to rise from nowhere? If so, then it's time to rise up. It's time to protect what belongs to you. It's time to evict what was never meant to live with you. And if invisible invaders can weaken your household, imagine what happens when the very atmosphere itself is polluted, demanding a cleansing that goes deeper than surface living. The power of purity cannot be underestimated, because purity is not just about what you do, it's about what you allow to exist in your environment. A pure home carries peace, clarity, and freedom. But a polluted home carries confusion, heaviness, and bondage. Purity is protection, and impurity is an invitation. That is why the enemy works so hard to contaminate the atmosphere of your dwelling. If he can pollute it, he can control it. If he can control it, he can influence everything that happens inside it. Think about it. Why do you feel different when you walk into certain places? Why do some homes feel light, calm, and safe, while others feel tense, cold, or heavy? It is because the atmosphere has either been purified or polluted. An atmosphere is not random. It is shaped by what is present. Objects, sounds, conversations, even the unseen spiritual weight of things all contribute to the atmosphere. When something unclean is allowed to remain, it contaminates the environment. And once the environment is contaminated, your spirit senses it, even if your mind cannot explain it. Purity creates space for peace to rest. It makes room for joy to thrive. It opens the door for clarity, creativity, and blessing to flow. But impurity shuts all of that down. Suddenly, small arguments explode into division. Suddenly, sleep becomes restless and dreams become troubled. Suddenly, finances seem drained and opportunities close. Why? Because impurity in your environment opens doors for oppression to step in. This is why it is not enough to just remove harmful objects. You must also cleanse the atmosphere. You must dedicate your home. You must speak life into your walls. You must establish your dwelling as a place where light reigns. Because darkness only thrives where purity is missing. The enemy cannot stand purity. He hates it because purity attracts presence. The presence of peace, the presence of joy, the presence of protection. And where that presence exists, he cannot stay. Ask yourself, what kind of atmosphere fills your home right now? When people walk through your doors, do they feel comfort or do they feel unrest? When you sit in your living room, do you feel peace or do you feel drained? What you feel is a reflection of the purity level of your environment. And purity is not accidental, it is intentional. You must guard it, nurture it, and protect it. So I challenge you, don't just live in your home, sanctify it. Don't just decorate your space, purify it. Don't just ignore the heaviness, confront it. Because until purity is restored, peace will always be stolen. And if purity has the power to drive out darkness, then what happens when the enemy builds strongholds that take root, transforming ordinary objects into chains that bind entire households? From objects to strongholds, that is how the enemy operates. He never stops at just one item, one symbol, one entry point. His goal is not a visit, it is residency. What begins as a single object placed in your home can grow into a stronghold that dominates your atmosphere, controls your emotions, and influences your decisions. Strongholds are not just physical, they are mental, emotional, and spiritual fortresses built through time, through repetition, and through acceptance. And once a stronghold is established, it no longer needs constant attention. It operates on its own. An object may look like nothing, but it serves as a seed planted in your environment, watered by your ignorance, strengthened by your silence, and reinforced by your acceptance. Over time, that seed grows into a structure. And once the structure is standing, it becomes a stronghold. Have you ever noticed how some struggles in a home don't just appear occasionally, but stay for years? Cycles of anger, cycles of lack, cycles of sickness, cycles of division. Those are signs of strongholds. They are not random accidents. They are established patterns fed by something that was allowed to remain. The danger of strongholds is that they feel permanent. You begin to accept them as normal. You start to say, that's just the way things are. But nothing about bondage is normal. Nothing about constant strife, fear, or heaviness is normal. Those are the fruits of a stronghold planted and left unchecked. The enemy knows that if he can convince you to tolerate it, he never has to fight you again, because the stronghold will fight you for him. Think carefully. What has remained in your home for so long that you stopped questioning it? What patterns have become so familiar that you started calling them normal? Those are the very places where strongholds hide. And strongholds do not simply influence one area, they spread. A stronghold of fear can choke joy. A stronghold of anger can poison love. A stronghold of lack can shut down opportunities. They multiply, they grow, they chain entire households. But here is the truth. No stronghold is permanent when exposed to light. Strongholds thrive in secrecy, in denial, in silence. The moment you recognize them, the moment you expose their root, their power begins to break. But you must be bold enough to admit that what you thought was just an object, just a tradition, just a harmless presence, has become a fortress that needs to be torn down. So I ask you, what strongholds are standing in your house right now? What invisible chains are holding back your destiny? What cycles have you mistaken for normal life when in reality they are the enemy's grip? You do not have to live under them. You do not have to accept them. You can break them, but first you must see them for what they are. And if strongholds can silently shape the future of a family, imagine what happens when the enemy gains direct access through the objects you allow, giving him permission to enter, influence, and destroy. Removing the enemy's access points is the final and most critical step, because all the warnings, all the discernment, all the recognition mean nothing if you allow the access points to remain. You cannot expose the enemy and then let him stay. You cannot identify the doors and then leave them open. Access points are invitations, and as long as they exist, darkness will keep coming in. You may pray, you may fast, you may cry out for breakthrough, but if the access points are still in place, the cycle will continue. Think about it. If you left your front door unlocked every night, would you be surprised if intruders kept returning? No. You would realize you created the opportunity. The same is true in the spirit. The objects you allow, the symbols you ignore, the gifts you never questioned. These are not just things, they are doors. And doors either let life in or let death in. There is no neutral ground. The enemy does not need permission in words. He only needs permission through access. And every access point is like a legal right. If he has the right to be there, he will not leave just because you want him gone. You must revoke his right. You must take action. You must remove what does not belong. That means going through your home with spiritual eyes, identifying what carries darkness and choosing to let it go. No excuses, no hesitation, no compromise. And yes, sometimes it is painful because objects can carry memories. They can come from people you love. They can be tied to moments you cherish. But hear me, no memory, no sentiment, no tradition is worth your peace, your family, or your destiny. If keeping it costs you your future, it is not worth keeping. If holding on to it keeps your home under attack, it is not worth holding. You must decide what matters more, the object in your hand or the freedom of your house. So I ask you now, what access points are still open in your home? What objects have you ignored because you thought they were harmless? What gifts have you kept because you didn't want to offend? What symbols have you tolerated because you didn't understand? Today is the day to decide. Today is the day to cleanse your home. Today is the day to shut the doors that should never have been open. Because once the access is removed, the authority of darkness is broken. And now, let me leave you with this. Your home is not just a shelter, it is a sanctuary. Your house is not just walls, it is the gate to your destiny. If the enemy controls your home, he controls your future. But if you reclaim your home, you reclaim your peace. Shut the doors, break the access, remove what doesn't belong, because when the enemy loses access, he loses power. And when he loses power, you walk in freedom at last.